Okay, here we're describing verbs, transitive verbs and intransitive verbs. And so hopefully this will be really quickly done for you. So just as a quick review for verb, a verb is a word describing an action, occurrence, or state of being. You should know that if you're up to this lesson. Verbs can be described as either transitive or intransitive. Some verbs need to act on an object, which is a noun or a pronoun, while others do not. And basically the ones that do are one type of verb, while the ones that do not are another type of verb. So first we'll talk about transitive verbs. A transitive verb is a verb that does take an object. Transitive verbs can be passive. Sometimes transitive verbs take an object and a direct object and those are called ditransitive verbs. So don't stress about that too much. So for example of transitive verbs, so Peter kicked the ball. Here, the verb is blue. That looks blue to me. Okay, almost thought it was purple. So blue is the blue kicked is our verb, and ball, the red ball, is object. Okay, Polly loves her dog. So loves, we need something to receive the action of that love, and that's her dog. I want more books. Want is a transitive verb because something needs to be wanted when you're using that verb. So what do you want? More books. So our object is more books. The students made posters. Made is our verb, and the thing that was receiving the action of the verb made is posters. The thing that's receiving in the next sentence the action of ate is Pop-Tart, right? My brother ate my Pop-Tart. So the object there is my Pop-Tart. The next one is my brother gave me the Pop-Tart. Now this is a little more complicated. This is what I was calling a ditransitive verb because ditransitive verb is that word right there. Because now we have a direct object, which is in pink in this case, and I underlined it just in case you can't see the difference between red and pink on here. So gave is the blue verb, okay? Now to me, we don't say the to in this case. That is our direct object, okay? I'm not receiving the action of the giving. The me is not receiving the action of the giving. The thing that's receiving the action of the giving is the Pop-Tart, okay? But that Pop-Tart is going somewhere. And where is it going to? It's going to me, okay? So that is our direct object. That is called why we have a ditransitive verb. And then another one here is I read a book to her. Read is the verb. The thing that's being read is the book, and who's it being read to? Typically, direct object follows that to her. So her is the direct object here. Okay, so the last two examples are examples of ditransitive verbs. But all of these examples here are transitive. Scrolling down to passive transitive verbs, okay? So transitive verbs can be passive. In that case, the object comes before the verb. So the ball is our object, the thing receiving the action was kicked. The dog was loved by Polly, the books were wanted, many posters were made, the Pop-Tart was eaten by my irritating brother, the book was read by me. So you notice that all of the red here is first because the object comes before the verb. That's passive sentence structure, and typically passive writing we don't love to use in formal writing. You should avoid it. You should write more actively. But that transitive verbs have that ability, and because you have an object that can come before the verb. All right. Passive active sentences is another lesson too. So intransitive verbs cannot be passive. Intransitive verbs are verbs that do not take an object. So I cried. You could say I cried tears, I suppose, but we don't usually, there's nothing really receiving the action of crying. The car broke down. There's nothing receiving the action in this sentence. You could say I broke my hand. Okay, in that case, that would be a transitive verb. But here, the car broke down. Okay, so there's nothing receiving that action. Polly reads. Okay, here I have nothing receiving the action. So in that case, it's intransitive. Peter sneezed. The soccer team runs every day. Running is almost always an intransitive, well, not really, but is quite often an intransitive verb. Polly's dog barks a lot, and the wind howls. A lot of there are intransitive verbs that can never receive an object, but some of these can be turned into transitive verbs just by providing. So for example, instead of the car broke down, I could say I broke the car. This right here is an intransitive verb, but over here, I actually turned it into a transitive verb because now I have a verb and I have something that's receiving the action of the verb, the car. So that would be the blue verb, and then car would be the red direct object. Okay, I can actually write that out more nicely. With my color code that I was using. Oops, I better write broke. Really small, like because I didn't leave enough space. So I broke the car is how that color code would go. So verb, direct object, okay? And so we have something receiving the action of the breaking. That is what we call transitive. But the word broke can also be used as in an intransitive way. The car broke down is intransitive because in this sentence, nothing's receiving the action. So just so you know that verbs can be either, depending on how you use them in a sentence. So hopefully that wasn't too confusing, and that's my lesson on transitive and intransitive verbs.